This is Kansas running back Devin Neal.
And to me, he plays like a coach's son, and I mean that as a compliment. He just does everything right. Most running backs don't have patience. He does. Most running backs, weak in pass protection. He's an asset there. He can catch the ball. He ran in zone. He ran in man schemes. To me, he's like a low-end, do-everything starter, or maybe a very reliable backup. It just depends. Are you okay with below-average physical tools?
Let's talk about all of that because you've done, I don't know, more than 1,000 of these videos with me. You kind of know that these types of players go straight to my heart. 5'11", 213 pounds, turns 22 in August. But yes, a 40th percentile athlete, and that's going to immediately turn off a whole bunch of you out there looking for a running back for your team. 41st percentile, basically speed at a 4.58, and then 78th percentile jumps. But man, this is the type of player people get down on because of that athletic testing, maybe more than any other position. To me, bad to average athletes can be incredibly productive at running back. But so much of the game, because of that, is eyes and feet working together in unison, balance, timing, no fat on your footwork. And Devin Neal has a chance to be really good in those categories. Like, of course, you would love an athletic freak who is also a sound and skillful runner, but those guys get drafted in the top 2 rounds. And guess what?
Yep.
Devin Neal is not going to get drafted in the top 2 rounds. So beyond that, all backs are viewed as imperfect. And frequently, it's the ones that are like this that end up the runners, the ball carriers, that when given the opportunity, it results in big production.
Yeah, I see the same exact thing. 180 carries in 3 straight seasons, 21 catches in all 3 of those seasons. He's really smooth, and I think that's where some of his athleticism can kind of make up for. It's just because there's no wasted movement. And we talked about that with previous prospects and like the Kyron Williams, the Blake Corum types, where you just see somebody that is just not making any mistakes, and he's reading the linebackers and finding the right lane, and he's picking up the yards that have been created for him. He's not necessarily going to be breaking a lot of tackles. He's not going to run through you necessarily either. He's just picking up everything that's been afforded to him. And that's really the name of the game. So yeah, there's not difference making traits in terms of first, second round caliber players, but we've seen a lot of running backs, 3rd round, 4th round, that are like pretty much plug and play starters as a rookie. And I think that Devin Neal, depending on the landing spot, that's might be his most likely path.
Yeah, to hit on more positives, I think teams are going to love his ability to turn 3-yard losses into 4-yard gains. Coaches are going to think that he masked a mistake and then he also then executes what was called in terms of hitting the right lane with the right timing. Man, Kansas pulled a whole bunch of offensive linemen, sometimes 2 or 3 on any given play. And he has such a great feel for following those pulling linemen, then cutting off their backside before contact to maximize that blocking. He'll even sometimes nearly stop behind it to allow the offensive line to engage. Again, it sounds so simple. His superpower is how connected his eyes and feet are. And like, this is what makes you play faster than backs who test better. He's compact and an efficient mover. And I even saw like one-on-one dead leg to make a linebacker whiff. The Illinois game pops out to me. He has DBs diving 10 yards down the field, and it looks like he's the one who's barely moving on top of it. So I rarely saw him lean into, lower his head, try to plow through a defender. He is a make you miss style of back. And oftentimes we think make you miss style players are the top end athletes. But again, if you barely move while the defender's moving a lot, that helps.
I see the exact same way. I think a lot of that translates to the pass game to 80th percentile in career receiving yards, just capable out there, can run a variety of different routes. But I think like the big thing to me, was really good in pass protection. He's got requisite mass. He can diagnose blitzers. And I think like playing college football for 4 years, we talked about a lot with the quarterbacks, but I also think it helps in pass protection. He's diagnosing blitzers, the techniques there. You actually see him like stay engaged on a block. A lot of players, you see a big shoulder come across or a chop block. Like he's like ready to stay there and be an asset. So I think that he's just going to be somebody where I can see like a Devin Singletary where like a fringe starter can bounce around the league, play for a variety of different schemes. But you also see some players that can develop more than that if they go into the right landing spot.
Yeah, he played a ton at Kansas. I mean, he's the first Jayhawk to rush for 1,000 yards in 3 straight seasons. I mean, he basically holds all the Kansas records when it comes to football. Maybe that's not that big of an achievement because we know where Kansas football has been, but we'll absolutely take it because I'm a big fan of Devin Neal. Yeah, just to the passing game standpoint, again, if there's one game that you all want to check out for this, I thought Kansas State really tested him in pass pro. They sent linebackers looping on the edge free, a slot corner, late arriving safeties. And I thought he did a really good job of identifying them and making contact. But there were also times where he wouldn't last the full rep or get square to halt their momentum at all times. And then as a receiver, they ran this play at least twice this year. It was play action to him with a offensive lineman the opposite way. The quarterback would do a slight rollout, and it's almost like a pseudo leak because no
Hmm.
one then would track Devin Neal the opposite direction. They picked up, I don't know, 21 yards on one, 25 yards on another. And then another quick pattern into the flats versus Arizona State that he, seamlessly twisted, caught it, and then got upfield again, all in one motion for a 25-yard gain. I thought his hands, while not being, wide receiver stuff, were really, really quite solid.
Yeah, one of my favorite comps for him is James White, who stayed in the league forever. There was a couple seasons where he got enough carries to make it matter in fantasy, but I always thought that he was very gifted in the pass game specifically. So on the bad side, it would be like Roshan Johnson, who we had pretty similar, who just like was not a good enough athlete to make a big difference for Chicago in his first couple seasons. That's like the low end outcome, but he's also still pretty reliable in the pass game. But I think like Devin Singletary to me is like the median comp. We've already hit on a couple. If you want to even dream bigger than that.
For me, he can be the Kyron Williams for a team. And I'm not saying like his size, speed standpoint is in line with what Kyron Williams entered the league with, but just that styling of a player. Even Rico Dowdle, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
just hit 1,300 yards this past year with the Dallas Cowboys when given his opportunity. Now, he didn't get paid a lot in free agency, but on a rookie contract and getting that early day three for an NFL team, I think you would take that up immediately as someone that doesn't have a calling card when it comes to one flashy aspect, but can be really productive. And like there's some stats that are really in his favor. Just 3 drops over his last 2 seasons, just 2 fumbles over the last 2 seasons as well. Look, the explosives aren't really going to be there, and I would expect them to even diminish once we get to the NFL. 10+ yard runs. He had those on 16% of his carries, 35 of 218 this past year. But man, like again, if people are too focused on athleticism at the position, again, you would love to have that along with the vision and the footwork that Devin Neal has. But Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, James Conner, Kyron Williams, Dalvin Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, Devontae Freeman, Frank Gore all range from average to bad testing athletes. And I'd fit Devin Neal in that category.
Hmm.
I'm not saying he's going to reach the heights of the Frank Gores or the Dalvin Cooks and the Josh Jacobs and lead the league close in touchdowns from rushing yards, but he can be a 1,300-yard back. I feel like Rico Dowdle just did.
Yeah. If your team you just watched day one, day two, and they went premium positions, and then you drafted Devin Neal late third round, early fourth round, give yourself a little pat on the back. I think that's a good value right there.
All right. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty, and I mean plenty, of prospect videos on the channel, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. We've got you covered. So again, hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, and we'll check you on the next one.